Hey everybody, we're going to be talking about the task for this term. So we're going to be talking about zines. So zines like a cut down version of a magazine, and it's generally a collection of some sort. So what I want to do is to brainstorm and come up with a zine that reflects you as a person or has some concept about who you are as a person and something that we probably wouldn't know. So I'm going to share a few things about my house and the types of things that I might include in a zine. So you can see on the shelf behind me there's a range of interesting objects. So this could be my collection. I could call it Lounge Room Mantelpiece Collection. And I'm just going to go through how I might photograph some of those objects. So this one here, for example, I could photograph in a light box, like make a light tent to photograph it. I could photograph this one on the shelf, so I actually get part of that and a little bit of the wall. Here I might decide to do this one with a bit of a shadow or split light, so I'm showing that particular technique. The lamp's obviously an amazing one to shoot bokeh with, because you can have it lit and then have the bokeh in behind. And this little number here, I could probably use this one for slow shutter speed and have it spinning so that I get that effect. This one in here, I could probably try painting with like my phone, torch or something like that, to experiment and to show another level of skill. Right, this is another example of what could be considered a collection or a group of objects that have been put together. So here I've got some books that have been colour coded, so I might decide to pull those out, set them up on a studio table with a couple of lamps, try some different styles of lighting, some rim lighting from the back, some 45-degree angle lighting at the front, try to create a bit of mood to show those books off. Humpty Dumpty, for example, I'd probably put him against the actual book backdrop so I get that same colour scheme that I've tried to represent in the actual photo. I might take the top out. I could obviously do a couple of different things with spinning shots so that the top is spinning in the shot, but I might take a downward angle view of it rolling on the table for my motion shot. I could probably use the Duracell bunny up here. He could be a motion shot as well. I could turn him on and he could have the drums playing so that he showed that motion part going up and down as part of my blurred motion. Remember, we're not going to be able to do flash because they're working from home, so it would have to be slow speed shutter stuff that shows that blurring of motion. I've got a couple of flip books here. I could take some photos of them actually flipping through, showing what they're supposed to be of. Slinky could be walking down something. So that's another range of things that I would think about. How can I show my photographic techniques that I've learnt this term and put them into a zine? So here's another interesting shelf. I'm just lucky that I've got a few of these, or many, floating around the house. So I could look at things that I could put together that might work together to create a type of subject. So I could pull these cards out and I could lay them out and I could shoot them more of a, I'm selling these in a light tent style photo somehow. Remember, we did low key and high key backgrounds, so I might choose to grab this skull, set it up against a white background, and that way it's a real high key shot because you've got the skull against that bright white background. Would look really good. I could continue with that and look at dried fruit. Here we've got dried chilies in that white background. I can then come up, I've got another one that I could use as a high key shot, or I could light this against a black background, make sure that I've got the detail on the whites, maybe a little bit of rim light just kicking off the mask to highlight that. As far as motion goes on this shelf, I've got a couple of options. I've got the roly-poly. He could obviously roll around for a bit of motion in my shot. I've got this wind-up car, or you might have a push-along car. Now I could actually set that up, have a third-party person helping me. I could push that across the table, okay, and as I'm doing it I can be moving the camera at the same time, maybe about probably 1/8 of a second, somewhere thereabouts, and I could try panning so that this is in focus, the background's blurred and it looks like everything's moving. Some interesting combinations of things. I could put the two little heads here together in a shot. So my zine would be a collection from this shelf. Alternatively, I could go and grab half a dozen of these things from different locations and pair them up, because that's the things that I want to highlight in my zine about myself. So this bunch of PVC pipe has probably been one of my best friends over the last 25 years. I've photographed a lot of commercial work with it, especially dinnerware and high-key photographs where I've needed a soft tent. I've photographed them at home where I haven't had flashlights, so I've had tungsten lighting, generally about the same wattage as what the school ones are, which is 500 watts. The ones that you'll be using home in lamps are around about 100, which is no issue. It just means that you've got a longer shutter speed to get the same result. So I'm just going to show you now. I'll just chuck them to one side. So I pretty much loosely just chuck these together. You notice that I've slid that all the way through the T-piece, so I've got a little piece of leg at the back. I can then grab a bunch of backgrounds to put on. So this material here is pretty much what you would see on one of those soft boxes at school, either on flash or on a continuous light. So you could use that as a background if you've got one. That allows you to shine a light through the back. If you don't have one of these, it's not the end of the world, because there are a couple of other options. I've got this old white sheet that's been hanging around. I went out to the shed to grab it out of a rag basket. I could actually put another couple of poles in here using my joiners so that I create a cube like the ones we've used at school before. A couple more T-pieces, piece connecting here for a bit of engineering stability. Wrap this whole sheet around. I've then got a complete light tent that I can light from 45 degrees from both sides, and I'll actually set that up and show you a shot after. The other type of simple background is obviously plenty of newsagents sell this type of paper. It's just a matter of picking a colour that you want that goes with the type of thing that you've got. A couple of bulldog clips or a bit of tape, and then taping that to my frame, and suddenly I've got a whole range of different backgrounds with that beautiful curve in the bottom. So I've got that horizon line going off into the distance. Okay, so you can see here I've set a red background up with those bulldog clips. I've picked one of the objects off my shelf from before. I'm trying to have a look at what position to photograph from, so I probably have the camera from about actually here, coming from this angle. I'm trying to set that up a little bit like butterfly lighting, okay, to demonstrate that technique that you've learnt. So that drops the shadow at the back. I've got my camera about here somewhere underneath that light, so that way I'm not getting the shadow in the background. And I'm going to pop the reflector in here and hold it while I take the shot, so that I've got as much light illuminating my subject as I can to give it that beautiful quality. Okay, the other option would be to bring the light more to the side, a little bit more like a Rembrandt style, and that way I've got the brightest part of my light hitting the background and hitting the face, and it will actually drop off as it goes across. Once again, if I position my camera cleverly, I can minimise the shadow at the back, or I could drop a reflector in again to help light that particular subject. Alright, so you can see I've quickly thrown this light tent together so I get a beautiful, even, illuminated, non-reflective light. Really good with things that are glass surfaces and things like that. In this case, the skull's unlikely to have a reflective point, but it may because it's white, so I've chosen it to put in there. You'll notice that the important thing is the position of your lights again. Are you lighting the object? Are you lighting the background? Are you lighting from the front? I'm trying to get both of these to go through the sheet to be more like a softbox. You'll notice if I bring this light in a bit closer, because this globe's a little bit brighter, it actually brightens up one side more than the other. So I've just backed that one off a bit so that they're both roughly giving me the same power on both sides, so I get that even light, and I'll show you the shot in the video in a second. So walls are a really good spot to do portraits, as are chairs and tables and things where you can sit, and the light often drops off quite dramatically in the background, as you can see. So single light source. Once again, the wall's now acting as a reflector. So some of the light's falling on me, some's falling on the wall, some's bouncing back into my face. I can have another reflector here to soften this side if I wanted to, and we'll show you what that looks like in a photograph in a second. And then we're just going to switch on the other light. So I've got the other lamp positioned over here, and I'm going to turn that on to create a fill light. So I've turned the fill light on. You'll notice now that it's illuminated just softly, hasn't filled in everything. It's just filling in some of the shadow softly on this side. If it's a little bit too much, I've got two options, is to either move the lamp back further, or I could add a sheet in front of the lamp to drop that off until I'm happy with the contrast between one side and the other, depending on the lighting style that I'm trying to convey to the audience. So we'll show you what those shots look like, and now it's up to you to create your own shots, showing a range of all the different techniques that we've learnt last term. So different types of lighting styles for portraiture, different shutter speed techniques, different bokeh techniques for depth of field, and if you're stuck doing them at home, you'll be able to do all of those things either with a single lamp, or if you've got two lamps. I picked that one up for $10 on Marketplace. This one's $20 from IKEA,